The blood-red sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty town of Redemption Creek, where the whispers of Olivia Erikson's disappearance had begun to fade like footprints after a storm. 3 weeks had passed since the spirited daughter of the town's former schoolteacher had vanished, and most folks had already stopped looking, assuming she'd run off with some traveler passing through, or worse, fallen victim to the dangers that lurked in the untamed territories of Colorado in 1878. The wind carried the scent of sage and pine through the streets as Kieran Malloy guided his exhausted Mustang down the town's main thoroughfare. His weather-beaten duster and the grime of 2 weeks' hard riding told the story of a man who'd been pushing himself to the limits. He'd been away hunting bounties in the Northern Territories when news reached him about the disappearance of Thomas Erikson's only daughter. "You're wasting your time looking for that girl," drawled Sheriff Dobson from his tilted chair outside the jailhouse. "Already sent out search parties. Nothing." Kieran dismounted, his spurs jingling softly as his boots hit the dirt. "Thomas was a good man. Taught me to read when no one else would bother with a ranch hand's boy. I owe him." The sheriff spat tobacco juice into the dust. "Well, now he's 6 feet under from that lung sickness, and his daughter's likely somewhere with the coyotes. Warren Blackwell's already claimed the land." Kieran's jaw tightened at the mention of the cattle baron who'd been buying up every parcel of land in the county. Awful convenient for Blackwell. Thomas dies, and before the girl can inherit, she vanishes. "Watch your accusations, Malloy. Blackwell's got friends in high places, and I've got nothing but time and determination." Kieran led his horse toward the livery stable, his mind already working through what he knew. Olivia Erikson, 22 years old, unmarried, and according to those who knew her, too stubborn to simply abandon her father's homestead. Something wasn't right. After securing lodging at the town's only hotel, Kieran made his way to the saloon. Information flowed like whiskey in such places, and he needed both. The Piano Man Saloon was bustling with cowhands, miners, and the usual assortment of characters that populated frontier towns. "Whiskey," he ordered, sliding onto a bar stool. The bartender, a burly man with a scar running through his left eyebrow, poured the amber liquid. "You're Malloy's boy, aren't you?" the bartender asked, recognition dawning on his face. "I am. Heard you made something of yourself. Bounty hunter now." Kieran nodded, downing his drink. "Tracking men is what I do best. Right now, I'm trying to find Olivia Erikson." The bartender's expression darkened, and he leaned closer. "Might want to keep your voice down about that. Some topics aren't welcome here anymore." "Since when is finding a missing woman unwelcome?" "Since Warren Blackwell decided he wanted that land and paid good money for it." The bartender glanced nervously around the room. "Look, I like Thomas. Good man. His daughter was decent folk too. Kind to everyone. Even those society ladies turn their noses up at. But you start asking too many questions, you'll find yourself in trouble." Kieran ordered another whiskey, surveying the room. "I've been in trouble before." A woman in a faded red dress approached, her painted smile not quite reaching her eyes. "You're new in town, handsome. Just passing through." She sat beside him uninvited. "My name's Ruby, and nobody just passes through Redemption Creek these days without business with Mr. Blackwell." Kieran studied her. "You know much about what happens around here, Ruby?" "I know enough to stay alive." She accepted the drink he ordered for her, and enough to know when someone's digging where they shouldn't. "What if I'm just looking for a lost friend?" Ruby's facade cracked slightly, her eyes darting to the saloon doors. Some lost things should stay lost, for their own good. Before she could elaborate, a commotion at the entrance drew everyone's attention. For men entered, their presence immediately changing the atmosphere. Kieran recognized the one in front, Lucas Blackwell, Warren's son, a man known for his quick temper and quicker gun. Ruby stiffened. "I should go." "Wait," Kieran said softly. "Tell me something, anything about Olivia." Ruby hesitated, then whispered, "Check the old Wilkins place, 3 miles east of town. There's an abandoned smokehouse." She slipped away as Lucas Blackwell approached the bar. "Well, look what the wind blew in," Lucas sneered, eyeing Kieran. "A bounty hunter with a reputation for sticking his nose where it doesn't belong." Kieran turned slowly on his stool. "Lucas, still hiding behind your father's money." The saloon fell silent, patrons backing away from the impending confrontation. Lucas's hand hovered near his gun. I heard you were asking about the Erikson girl. That's family business now. Family business? Last I checked, she wasn't your family. Her father's land is Blackwell property now, fair and square. Kieran stood, careful to keep his hands visible. Nothing about Warren Blackwell has ever been fair or square. Lucas's eyes narrowed. You've got until sundown tomorrow to leave town, Malloy. After that, I won't be responsible for what happens. Funny, Kieran replied. I was just about to say the same to you. The tension crackled between them like summer lightning until the sheriff entered the saloon, breaking the spell. Everything all right in here? Dobson asked, though his eyes were fixed on Kieran rather than Lucas. Just welcoming an old acquaintance back to town, Lucas said, backing away with a smirk. Remember what I said, Malloy. Sundown tomorrow. After they left, the bartender shook his head. You've made a powerful enemy, son. Seems like I already had one. Kieran placed a coin on the counter. Thanks for the drinks. That night, Kieran couldn't sleep. Ruby's words echoed in his mind. The old Wilkins place had been abandoned for years after the family was killed during an outbreak of violence with a group of raiders. Why would Olivia be there? It didn't make sense unless someone had taken her there. Before dawn, Kieran saddled his horse and rode out of town, avoiding the main roads. The Wilkins homestead appeared on the horizon as the first rays of sunlight crept across the plains. The main house was a burnt-out shell, but behind it stood a stone smokehouse, its small window covered with wooden planks. Kieran approached cautiously, alert for any signs of guards or traps. The smokehouse door was secured with 3 heavy padlocks. Drawing his revolver, he circled the structure, listening intently. A soft scraping sound from within made him freeze. Olivia, he called quietly. Olivia Erikson? The scraping stopped, replaced by labored breathing. Who's there? A weak female voice responded. My name's Kieran Malloy. I knew your father. I've come to help you. Silence, then. It's a trick. Warren sent you to torment me before I die. No trick. Thomas taught me to read when I was 12. He always carried that silver pocket watch with your mother's picture inside. A sob escaped from within. Kieran? Little Kieran from the Douglas Ranch. Not so little anymore, he said, examining the locks. Stand back from the door if you can. The locks were sturdy, designed to keep valuable smoked meat safe from thieves. Kieran fired at the first one, the sound echoing across the empty landscape. The lock shattered, but the other 2 remained intact. They'll hear the shots, Olivia warned, her voice stronger now with hope. Lucas comes to check on me every few days. They're starving me until I sign over the deed. Kieran holstered his gun and retrieved an axe from his saddlebag. Then we'll have to be quick. He swung the axe against the second lock, metal striking metal with a resounding clang. It took 4 powerful blows before it gave way. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he attacked the final lock, splinters of wood flying as the axe bit into the door frame around it. With a final heave, the last lock broke free. Kieran pulled the door open, and the stench of confinement and despair washed over him. Inside, huddled in the corner on a pile of filthy straw, was Olivia Erikson. She was thinner than he remembered, her once vibrant copper hair hanging in tangled strands around a face hollowed by hunger and fear. Her wrists were raw from the chains that bound her to a metal ring embedded in the wall. My God, Olivia, he whispered, rushing to her side. What have they done to you? They killed him, she said, tears streaming down her dirt-smudged face. My father. It wasn't the sickness. Warren Blackwell poisoned him slowly, making it look like consumption. When I confronted him, they brought me here. Kieran examined the chains. They were locked with a smaller padlock, which he broke with a precise shot from his revolver. Can you stand? He asked, helping her to her feet. Olivia swayed, weak from captivity and malnourishment. I think so. We need to move fast. My horse can carry us both until we reach the next town. He supported her as they emerged into the daylight, her eyes squinting against the brightness she hadn't seen in weeks. Kieran helped her onto his horse before mounting behind her, one arm secured protectively around her waist. Where will we go? She asked, leaning back against his chest for support. First to safety, then to justice, he replied, urging his horse into a gallop away from the Wilkins property. The territorial marshal in Silver Peak knows me. He's honest, unlike Dobson. They rode hard through the morning, taking trails Kieran knew would be difficult to follow. By midday, they stopped at a small creek to rest the horse and allow Olivia to drink and wash some of the grime from her face and hands. "I remember you," she said, sitting beside him on a fallen log. "You were that serious boy who followed my father around with books." Kieran smiled. He saw something in me when others just saw a ranch-hand son with dirt under his nails. He saw the good in everyone. Her voice caught, even when they didn't deserve it. "Tell me everything that happened, Olivia. We'll need every detail when we speak to the marshal." She took a deep breath, gathering her strength. "Warren Blackwell has wanted our land for years. It sits on a natural spring that feeds half the county. My father refused to sell, even when times got hard after Mother died. Then he started getting sick, just little things at first, weakness, coughing. The doctor said it was consumption, but you suspected otherwise. Not at first, but then I found a vial in Warren's pocket when he came to visit. He'd been bringing medicine that my father trusted him to deliver from the doctor in Silver Peak. I confronted him, and she shuddered. He admitted everything. Said no one would believe me, the hysterical daughter of a dying man. That night, Lucas and 2 men dragged me to the smokehouse." Kieran's jaw clenched in anger. 3 weeks they kept you there? Hoping I'd die or break. Warren came once, offering me freedom if I'd sign the deed and leave the territory. Pride flashed in her eyes. I told him I'd rather die. That land is rightfully yours, and Blackwell will pay for what he's done. A sound in the distance made them both tense, horses approaching. "They've found us," Olivia whispered. Kieran helped her onto his horse. "Not yet, they haven't." They rode deeper into the forested hills, using every trick Kieran had learned as a tracker to obscure their trail. By nightfall, they had reached a small hunter's cabin Kieran knew from previous expeditions. "We'll rest here tonight," he said, helping her dismount. "No one knows about this place except a few trappers, and they won't be around until winter." The cabin was sparse but offered shelter, a stone fireplace, and most importantly, a lockable door. Kieran prepared a small fire and shared his provisions with Olivia, who ate slowly, her stomach unused to food after days of near starvation. "Why did you come back?" she asked as night settled around them. "You could have stayed away, been safe." Kieran added another log to the fire. "Your father changed my life. When my own father died in that mining accident, Thomas made sure I had books, learning. He's the reason I can read wanted posters instead of just being on them. He would be proud of the man you've become." Their eyes met across the fire, and something shifted between them, a recognition of shared loss, shared purpose, and perhaps something more. "You should rest," Kieran said, breaking the moment. "We'll leave for Silver Peak at first light." Olivia nodded, settling onto the cabin's single cot, while Kieran positioned himself near the door, revolver at the ready. Despite his vigilance, exhaustion eventually claimed him, and he drifted into a light sleep. A crash of breaking glass jolted them both awake. Kieran was on his feet instantly, gun drawn, as a flaming torch sailed through the broken window. "Out! Now!" he shouted, grabbing Olivia's hand as smoke began to fill the cabin. They burst through the door into the cool night air, only to be met by the silhouettes of 4 mounted men, their faces illuminated by the growing fire behind Kieran and Olivia. Well, Lucas Blackwell's voice dripped with satisfaction. "Thought you could outrun us, did you?" "This ends now, Lucas," Kieran replied, positioning himself in front of Olivia. "You and your father will face justice for murder and kidnapping." Lucas laughed. "Justice? In these parts, we are the justice. No one's going to take the word of a bounty hunter and a madwoman over the Blackwells." "I'm not mad," Olivia said, her voice steady despite her fear. "And there are others who suspect what you did to my father." Dr. Reynolds questioned the symptoms. "The Reverend's wife noticed my father only worsened after your visits." Uncertainty flickered across Lucas's face, quickly replaced by anger. "Doesn't matter. You'll both be dead by morning, victims of a tragic cabin fire." Kieran raised his revolver. "You first." The night erupted in gunfire. Kieran pushed Olivia toward the cover of trees as he fired, hitting one of Lucas's men in the shoulder. Return fire splintered wood near his head, forcing him to dive for protection behind a water barrel. "Run, Olivia!" he shouted, providing covering fire as she disappeared into the darkness. A bullet grazed Kieran's arm, burning like a hot poker. He gritted his teeth, took careful aim, and shot the lantern hanging from Lucas's saddle. The glass shattered, oil spilling onto the horse, which reared in panic, throwing Lucas to the ground. Using the confusion, Kieran sprinted toward the trees where Olivia had fled. Bullets whizzed past him, one tearing through his duster. He found her crouched behind a large pine. "My horse," he gasped, clutching his wounded arm. "They've got him," she whispered. I saw one of them leading him away. Cursing under his breath, Kieran assessed their situation. "We need to keep moving. There's a trading post about 5 miles north. We might find help there." They traveled through the night, the forest growing denser as they climbed higher into the hills. Kieran fashioned a crude bandage for his arm from a strip of his shirt, but blood still seeped through, leaving a trail he knew would be easy for experienced trackers to follow. Dawn was breaking when they reached the trading post, only to find it abandoned. Its occupants likely fled for the winter already. "We can't stop," Kieran said, searching the empty building for anything useful. He found a rusted revolver with 3 bullets and an old canteen. "Lucas won't give up. Our best chance is to reach the next town." Olivia looked at his bloodied sleeve. "You need rest, Kieran. That wound needs proper tending. Later," he insisted, though his face had grown pale. "Your safety comes first." They continued east, now following a narrow trail that wound through rocky terrain. The sun climbed higher, beating down mercilessly as they walked. By midday, Kieran was stumbling, the loss of blood and exertion taking its toll. "Stop," Olivia commanded, guiding him to a shaded outcropping of rocks. "You won't help either of us by collapsing." She examined his wound, cleaning it with water from the canteen and rebinding it with a cleaner portion of his shirt. Her touch was gentle yet confident, reminding him that she was the daughter of a man who had tended to many of the town's ailments before the new doctor arrived. "My father taught me a little about treating injuries," she explained, catching his questioning look. Said knowledge was never wasted. He was right about that, Kieran murmured, watching her work. Despite her ordeal, there was a strength in her movements, a determination that impressed him. "How did you survive in that smokehouse for so long?" A shadow passed over her face. "Hope, mostly. And anger. I wanted justice for my father." She secured the bandage. "And there was a loose floorboard they didn't notice. Small animals would sometimes come underneath mice, a rabbit once. I had to eat what I could catch." Kieran took her hand, squeezing it gently. "You're the bravest person I've met, Olivia Erikson." She looked away, but not before he saw the tears glistening in her eyes. "We should keep moving." They continued their journey through the afternoon, more cautiously now, aware that Lucas and his men could be anywhere. The terrain grew more rugged as they approached a river valley that would lead them to the town of Silver Peak. "Once we cross this valley, we'll be in Silver Peak by nightfall," Kieran said, his strength somewhat restored after their rest. They had just started to descend when the crack of a rifle echoed across the valley. Dirt kicked up inches from Olivia's feet. "Get down." Kieran pulled her behind a boulder as another shot rang out. "We know you're there, Malloy." Lucas's voice called from somewhere above them. "Send out the girl, and you can ride away from this." "That's not going to happen, Lucas," Kieran shouted back, scanning the ridgeline for any sign of their pursuers. "She's not worth dying for." Kieran looked at Olivia, her face set with grim determination. "You're wrong about that," he called back, then whispered to her. "When I start firing, run for those trees. Don't stop until you reach them." "I'm not leaving you," she insisted. "You have to. One of us needs to reach Silver Peak with the truth." He pressed the rusted revolver into her hand. 3 bullets. Make them count if you need to." Before she could protest further, Kieran leaned out from behind the boulder and fired twice toward the ridge. "Now, Olivia, run." She hesitated only a moment before sprinting toward the tree line, zigzagging to make herself a difficult target. Kieran continued firing, drawing the attention of their attackers. A bullet struck the boulder, sending stone fragments flying into his face. Through watering eyes, he saw Olivia reach the trees safely. Relief flooded through him, followed immediately by searing pain as a bullet found his leg, sending him sprawling onto the ground. "Got him!" A voice crowed from above. Kieran dragged himself back behind the boulder, breathing heavily. Blood soaked through his pants where the bullet had struck his thigh. He checked his revolver, 1 bullet left. Footsteps approached, crunching on gravel. Kieran gripped his weapon tightly, determined to take at least one more of them with him. "It's over, Malloy," Lucas said, appearing around the edge of the boulder, rifle aimed at Kieran's chest. Two other men flanked him, their guns also trained on the wounded bounty hunter. "Not quite," Kieran replied, his gun steady despite his injuries. Lucas smirked. "One bullet against 3 guns? Those odds don't favor you. I only need 1 bullet if it finds the right target." Kieran's eyes never left Lucas. "Your father sent you to do his dirty work again? Wonder if he'd bother looking for you if you didn't come back." Uncertainty flickered in Lucas's eyes. "Shut up and drop the gun." "You know he wouldn't. Warren Blackwell doesn't care about anyone but himself, not even his own son." I said shut up. Lucas's finger tightened on the trigger. A shot rang out, but it wasn't from Kieran's gun or Lucas's rifle. One of the men beside Lucas jerked backward, clutching his chest before collapsing. Confusion turned to chaos as more gunfire erupted from the tree. Kieran seized the moment, firing his last bullet at Lucas, striking him in the shoulder and causing him to drop his rifle. "Ambush!" the remaining man shouted, firing wildly toward the trees before a bullet found him, ending his cry abruptly. Lucas scrambled for his fallen weapon, but a boot stepped on it first. He looked up to see Olivia standing over him, the rusted revolver pointed at his face. "This is for my father," she said, her voice ice cold. "Olivia, no," Kieran called out. "Not like this. He needs to face justice." Her hand trembled slightly, tears streaming down her face as she stared at her tormentor. For a moment, Kieran thought she would pull the trigger anyway. Then more figures emerged from the trees, men wearing badges, led by a tall, silver-haired man Kieran recognized as Marshal James Cooper from Silver Peak. "Lower your weapon, miss," Cooper said gently. "We've got him now." Olivia hesitated, then slowly lowered the gun. One of the deputies immediately secured Lucas, who groaned in pain as his arms were pulled behind his back. "Marshal," Kieran said, relief evident in his voice. "How did you find us?" Cooper knelt beside him, examining his wounds. "Got word from Ruby at the saloon. Said Blackwell's men were bragging about teaching you a lesson. When we heard about the fire at the hunter's cabin, we set out tracking you." He looked at Olivia. "You must be Thomas Erikson's daughter. Half the territory thinks you're dead or run off." "I was being held prisoner," she said, moving to Kieran's side. "They were starving me to get my land." Cooper's expression darkened. "That matches what Ruby told us. She overheard Warren Blackwell giving orders to his son about finishing what they started. We've got deputies heading to Redemption Creek now to arrest Warren." As they helped Kieran onto a horse, he reached for Olivia's hand. "You came back for me. I told you to keep running." She smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen since freeing her from the smokehouse. "I did run straight to the marshal's men we saw crossing the valley. I wasn't about to leave you behind." The journey to Silver Peak was slow due to Kieran's injuries, but by nightfall, they arrived at the town doctor's home. Dr. Mitchell, a gruff but skilled physician, removed the bullet from Kieran's leg and cleaned both his wounds. "You're lucky," Mitchell told him as he applied bandages. "Few more hours, and that arm might have festered beyond saving." While Kieran was being treated, Olivia gave her full statement to Marshal Cooper, detailing her father's poisoning and her imprisonment. By morning, word arrived that Warren Blackwell had been arrested while attempting to flee with a considerable sum of money. "He's denying everything," Cooper informed them when he visited Kieran's sick room the next day. "But we found vials of poison in his home that match what the doctor described, and several witnesses have come forward now that they're not afraid of retaliation." Olivia sat beside Kieran's bed, her hand resting near his. "And my father's land? Legally, it's still yours. The deed transfer Warren was waving around has been deemed fraudulent since your signature was forged." After the marshal left, Kieran noticed Olivia's subdued expression. "What's wrong? You've got your land back, and the Blackwells will face justice." She sighed, looking out the window at the bustling town. "The land feels empty now, without my father. I'm not sure I can go back there and not see him everywhere." "What will you do?" "I don't know. Sell it, maybe. Start fresh somewhere else." She turned to him. "What about you? Back to bounty hunting once you're healed?" Kieran considered this. For years, he drifted from town to town, hunting men with prices on their heads. It was a solitary existence, one he'd chosen after losing everyone he cared about. I haven't thought that far ahead, he admitted. Never had much reason to plan beyond the next bounty. Well, you have time to consider it now. Dr. Mitchell says you won't be riding anywhere for at least 3 weeks. 3 weeks. It was the longest Kieran had stayed in one place in years. As the days passed, he found himself looking forward to Olivia's daily visits. She brought books from the town library, reading to him when his eyes grew tired, discussing stories long into the evening. She was different from the girl he remembered, hardened by her ordeal, yet somehow more vibrant, more alive. "You've changed," he told her one afternoon as she helped him take his first steps around the room, his arm draped over her shoulders for support. "So have you," she replied. "You're not that serious boy anymore." "No, I'm a serious man now," he joked, earning a laugh that brightened her entire face. By the second week, Kieran could walk with just a cane, and they began taking short strolls through Silver Peak. People greeted them warmly, word of their ordeal having spread through the community. Many expressed outrage at what the Blackwells had done, offering support and friendship to Olivia. "I could stay here," she mused as they sat on a bench in the town square. "Silver Peak seems like a good place." Kieran nodded, a strange tightness in his chest at the thought of her settling here while he moved on. "The school might need a teacher. You have your father's gift for it." "Maybe." She studied his face. "And what about you, Kieran Malloy? Where will you go when your leg heals?" The question hung between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. Kieran had never considered putting down roots anywhere, but something had changed in him since finding Olivia in that smokehouse. Perhaps it was seeing her courage in the face of cruelty, or the way she spoke of her father with such love despite her loss. Whatever it was, the thought of riding away alone no longer held the same appeal. "I've been thinking," he said carefully, "about your land." "What about it?" "It's good land. That spring makes it valuable for ranching." He looked away, suddenly unsure of himself. "If you were considering selling, I might be interested in buying." Olivia's expression grew guarded. "You want to buy my land? I thought you were a bounty hunter, not a rancher." "I was a ranch hand before I was a bounty hunter. I know cattle, horses." He met her eyes. "And I know what it means to have a home worth fighting for." "Is that what you want?" "A home. Maybe. With the right person." The air between them seemed to still as understanding dawned in her eyes. "Kieran, I'm not good with words like your father was," he continued, taking her hand. "But these past weeks, seeing you heal, seeing your strength, it's made me realize what I've been missing all these years on the trail." Olivia's free hand reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "And what's that?" "Someone to come home to. Someone worth staying for." Her smile was like sunrise breaking over the plains. "I'm not selling my land, Kieran Malloy, but I might consider a partner." The trial of Warren and Lucas Blackwell began 3 weeks later in the territorial court. Olivia testified about her imprisonment and her father's slow poisoning, her voice never wavering as she faced her tormentors across the courtroom. Kieran sat directly behind her, his presence a constant reassurance. The evidence was overwhelming. Dr. Reynolds confirmed that Thomas Erikson's symptoms were consistent with arsenic poisoning, not consumption. Ruby testified about conversations she'd overheard between Warren and Lucas. Most damning of all, one of Lucas's men, hoping for leniency, confessed to helping chain Olivia in the smokehouse on Warren's orders. After 2 days of testimony, the jury took less than an hour to reach their verdict: guilty on all counts. Warren Blackwell was sentenced to hang for murder, while Lucas received 20 years in the territorial prison for kidnapping and attempted murder. As they left the courthouse, Kieran took Olivia's hand. "It's over now." She nodded, tears of relief streaming down her face. "Justice for my father at last." They returned to Redemption Creek together, now changed in the eyes of the townspeople from the missing schoolteacher's daughter and the bounty hunter to heroes who had exposed the Blackwells' crimes. Sheriff Dobson had been replaced, evidence of his complicity in covering up the Blackwells' activities having come to light during the trial. The Erikson homestead stood much as Olivia had left it, though dust had settled on every surface. Kieran helped her clean, repair, and prepare for the coming winter. Together they planted the fields, bought cattle to graze the lush grass around the spring, and built a new life from the ashes of tragedy. One evening, As autumn painted the surrounding hills in gold and crimson, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "I never thought I'd feel at peace here again," Olivia said, leaning against Kieran's shoulder. "But somehow, you've made it home again." He kissed the top of her head. "You did that yourself? I just helped with the heavy lifting." She laughed, turning to face him. "Is that all you did? Just the heavy lifting?" "Well, I did break a few locks too," he teased, referencing their first meeting at the Smokehouse. Her expression grew serious. "You know, I never properly thank you for that day." "You don't need to thank me, Olivia." "I do." She took his hands in hers. "You could have ridden away when Lucas threatened you. You could have left me in that smokehouse. You could have abandoned me in the woods when you were shot. But you never did." "I never could," he replied softly. "From the moment I found you, something changed in me, like a lock breaking open." She rose up on her tiptoes and kissed him, a kiss full of promise and newfound joy. "Then I suppose we're even. Because you broke my locks, and I broke yours." That winter was harsh, snow piling high around the homestead, but inside was warmth and laughter. They were married by the new preacher in a small ceremony attended by friends from both Redemption Creek and Silver Peak. Marshall Cooper stood as Kieran's best man, and Ruby, now working as a seamstress after leaving the saloon life behind, attended as Olivia's maid of honor. Spring brought new calves to their growing herd, and the completion of the extension to the house Kieran had been building a larger kitchen and a second bedroom for the family they hoped to have. Summer saw their first successful cattle drive to the railhead, bringing in enough money to ensure their security for years to come. On the anniversary of her rescue from the smokehouse, Kieran presented Olivia with a gift, a small silver locket containing a tiny portrait of her father that he'd commissioned from a traveling artist based on descriptions and a faded photograph. "So he's always with you," Kieran said as he fastened it around her neck. Olivia touched the locket, tears in her eyes. "He would have been so proud of what we've built here." "He would have been proud of you," Kieran corrected gently. "Your strength, your forgiveness, your love." That night, as they lay together in their bedroom, Olivia shared her news. "The doctor in town confirmed it today. We're going to have a child next winter." Kieran's face lit up with joy as he placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "A child, a son or daughter to teach all the things my father taught me." "All the things he taught you." They fell asleep in each other's arms, secure in their love and the knowledge that from the darkest moments of their lives had bloomed something beautiful and enduring. 5 years later, the Malloy Ranch had become one of the most prosperous in the territory. Their home was filled with the laughter of 2 children, Thomas, named for Olivia's father, and Ruby, named for the woman whose courage had helped save Olivia's life. On a warm summer evening, as the children played in the yard under the watchful eye of their mother, Kieran stood at the fence line surveying their land. The pain in his legs still troubled him sometimes, especially when rain was coming, but he never regretted the bullet that had brought him to this life. Olivia joined him, slipping her arm through his. "Penny for your thoughts, Cowboy." He smiled at the nickname she'd given him. "Just thinking about locks." "Locks?" "About how breaking the locks on that smokehouse led to breaking all the locks I'd put around my own heart." He turned to her, taking in her face, still as beautiful to him as the day he'd found her. "I set out to rescue you, but in the end, you rescued me too." She stood on tiptoe to kiss him, the gesture as familiar and essential as breathing. "I suppose we saved each other." As the sun set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the land they'd fought for and won, Kieran Malloy held his wife close, grateful for the day he'd followed the whispers of a missing woman to an abandoned smokehouse, and in breaking her chains, found his own freedom. In the years that followed, their story became something of a legend in that part of the Colorado Territory, the tale of a bounty hunter who tracked not criminals but truth, and a woman whose courage in the face of cruelty inspired all who heard it. Their children grew strong and kind, carrying forward the legacy of learning and justice that Thomas Erikson had begun. And if travelers passing through Redemption Creek asked about the prosperous ranch by the spring, they would hear how love had bloomed from the ashes of hatred, and how sometimes the greatest treasures are found behind the strongest locks.